I'm Owen Bigland. This is the Inside Edge video blog. Okay, I'm going to talk a bit about the current tenancy market right now in Vancouver for us investors, placing new tenants, negotiating a rent increase with your existing tenant that a lot of people aren't aware of. So I'm going to talk about a number of topics here. Also in the news here, just to kick it off first, I saw several articles in the media lately talking about landlords switching to short-term furnished rentals. And yeah, I have seen this from a number of my clients. I've got hundreds that have decided to experiment a little bit with short-term rentals. Now, these are not Airbnb. I've told you guys, Airbnb is banned. Everyone thinks when you talk short-term rental, you're talking nightly rates on the Airbnb. Airbnb, for the most part, I did a blog on it 6 weeks ago. There are only a handful of strata that allow Airbnb in Vancouver. People need to realize this. Most of the Airbnb you see are illegal. They are tenants subletting it illegally. These people are professional con artists, essentially. They swoop in on unsuspecting landlords that do not do their due diligence on these people. They pose as tenants. I'm going to move into the unit, principal residence, and then they turn around and sublet it on Airbnb. Watch my blog I just did 6 weeks ago on that. I only know offhand about 5 strata in Vancouver that I would get clients into that do allow Airbnb. And even with that, it has to be your principal residence. You need to live in it full time. And you can only rent it on Airbnb 6 months out of the year. You also have to get a license, which is now $1,000 a year, and register with the strata and everything else. But what these people are doing now, a lot of these strata do allow 1 month minimum rental, or 2 months or 3 months minimum rental. So they are essentially furnishing it as a corporate rental, which can be quite a good fit. Lots of companies, Microsoft, these tech companies are relocating employees up here. They've got a $4,000 or $5,000 a month budget short term for these people. And you can rent these units furnished by the month or 2 months or 3 months. And the stratas do allow those. Most stratas, it depends on the strata, but a lot of them have a 1 month minimum, some 3 month, 6 month, and that is a good way to go. And a lot of landlords, of course, the reason they're going for those is it avoids these fixed term tenancies, which never expire. They go month to month after the year. Of course, the tenant stays years and years, so you're way under rent. At least renting it furnished by the month or by 3 months or 6 months, you've got that tenant turnover. Used to be a problem. Didn't used to want tenant turnover back 10 years ago. Now you kind of want it so you can keep raising those rents up to current market rent. Now, as I speak, I know the NDP is getting ready to make some harebrained dog and pony show here about clamping down on short-term rental. Well, that's great. I hope they're clamping down on the illegal Airbnb, because most of them are illegal. What they should do is, if someone is violating that, subletting a unit illegally on Airbnb, they should lower the boom on these people. Come down with a $10,000 or a $15,000 fine. That's what it should be. I'm all for that. But again, most Airbnb is wiped out in this city. There are very few strata that allow Airbnb, and you have to follow those guidelines. Most of the Airbnbs you see are illegal. They're being sublet. A couple other things here. I want to point out to people that I've got a lot of my viewers here that are landlords like myself and own multiple properties. And they've been in a situation where the tenant has been in there 2, 3, 4 years and is now paying way below market rent. I don't think a lot of people realize, landlords don't, that you can renegotiate that rent with your tenant via a mutual agreement. So you kind of have to have a gauntlet at the end of this, or a stick here, or a club at the end, with the threat of, hey, maybe I'm going to sell the unit if you don't agree to it. But this is perfectly legal. You can go to your tenant, who, let's say, has been in there 4 years and is currently paying $2,100. Let's say the current market rent for that unit is $3,100. You could go to your tenant and say, hey, listen, Tony, you've been a good tenant of mine. But as you know, rents, the cost for me to maintain and hold this property with interest rates, I haven't been able to raise the rent very much with you at all in the last 4 years. The current market rate for that condo you're in now is $3,200, and you're paying $2,200. $1,000 below market rent. Your tenant is going to know that for sure, unless he's been under in a cave. And listen, I want to be good to you. I'm not asking you to raise the rent up to $3,200, but I'd like to give you a $500 rent increase. I think that's fair for both of us. I want to raise your rent from $2,200 to $2,700 a month. And we will use this mutual agreement. We both have to agree to it to raise your rent starting next month or the month after that or whenever. It's all negotiable. And this is perfectly allowed. Now, I think in some cases, though, you kind of have to have, as I said, a gauntlet to that, let's call it, where, in other words, Tony, I just can't make ends meet on this. If I'm looking for a $500 increase, which is still way below market rent. Otherwise, if you don't want to agree to it, I get it. You don't have the money. It's tough out there. I'm going to, put the home on the market and sell it. And hey, in that situation, I might have another option for you. I'm willing to give you a couple of months rent if you'll sign a mutual agreement to end tenancy to vacate so I can sell it vacant. So this is all negotiable. I don't think a lot of people realize this. I have had in the last several months, because I'm in contact with a lot of my investor clients, and a lot of them will email me or call me because they might have a question about something, or how's the rental market, or how's the condo market downtown, what are things selling at, etc. I've had a couple of my landlords this year use the mutual agreement to raise the rent on an existing tenant, and it's a win-win situation. Again, a lot of times they're not asking the tenant to push it all the way back up to full market, but maybe they meet in the middle. Instead of a $1,000 increase, which would be market rent, we'll make it $500 or $600. But it has to be agreed upon by both parties. If the tenant doesn't want to sign that or agree to that higher rent, they don't have to take it. And you can leave the rent just as it is and give them the prescribed 3.5% for 2024. But of course, how it's generally negotiated is the landlord has kind of decided at this point, hey, if I can't raise the rent at least up another $500 or at least half of what market is, then hey, maybe I'm just better off selling the unit and moving on. So it's totally negotiable. And most times in my experience, I probably had in the last few years that I know of, 8 or 9 investment clients that have told me about they've negotiated that. All of the tenants have agreed to the rent increase, especially if you make it a win-win. Instead of asking for full market rent, you meet in the middle somewhere. And at least the landlord's happy. He's getting another $500-$600 to make ends meet. And the tenant, is smart in taking something like that, because he knows if he doesn't and he ends up selling the home, you're going to be out and trying to find a new place back up at full market rent. So it's a win-win situation. Final thing I'll tell you here on this tenancy front here again. I just placed a new tenant in one of my units in Olympic Village area, Mount Pleasant. Came out of the blue. My good tenant for me, he's been there 3 years, currently paying $2,000 a month. This is 500 square foot unit, no parking. Been there 3 years, paying just over $2,020 per month. I gave him the first raise last year at 2%. Has a job transfer that just came up and called me on a Saturday morning, the 10th of the month. So he called me and said, "Oh, and I know I'm not giving you the full notice here. I'm sure it's the 10th of the month, but I'm hoping, we can work something out. You could, I know the vacancy rate is near zero. And I'm sure you won't have a problem. It's a fantastic little unit in Olympic Village." So I said, no problem. Let me do my best here. I should be able to get my ads out on Monday in Craigslist. Give me a couple of days for showings, and we organized my first showings. We're going to be on a Thursday from 5 to 6 p.m. Placed the ad Monday morning. I think I ended up with about 20 inquiries on it in the first couple of hours. I would say after the first day, I probably had 30, but I had about 20 responses in the first 2 or 3 hours on it. Nuts, which I was expecting. Want to tell you now, the tenancy, the quality of the tenants here is incredible. So make a long story short, I only had my first showings were an hour window, Thursday, 5 to 6 p.m. I had enough time to show 5 showings on it, spread apart every 10 minutes. But I took it to the 5 that sent me the most information, were keen on it, some of the first ones to inquire. The 5 showings I had, all 5 gave me a tenancy application. Incomes range between $85,000 up to $150,000. I ended up renting it to a young doctor who has just moved out here from Toronto. Had a 850 credit score. I only ran 2 credit checks. I kind of take it in the order I receive these applications. So I ran the first 2. Both of them had credit scores well into 800. I felt the toughest part now is I have to call the other 4 and tell them I'm sorry. You were second or third in line. The unit has now been rented. Good luck with your search. But that's what the tenancy market is like right now. Here's give you guys a couple of pointers here too. Once I placed the ad, I had text messages. I also had emails coming in. This is what I want to see, and this is what the good tenants and the ones that I'm interested in are sending me. They're sending me an email, for the most part. Hi, Owen, my name is Stan Smith. I'm a 32-year-old non-smoker, single guy. I'm an engineer with X company. My office is just down the street. I saw your ad. I know that building. I would love to have a showing for that unit. Please let me know. I can make myself available at any time. Sometimes they'll include their credit scores. I can provide you with my employer information. I've been with this company for 5 years. I make X amount. Varying degrees of that. That's what I want to see as a landlord, and that's what I'm expecting to see. What I don't want to see, and what I got some of, is a text message that said, "When can I see unit?" ? When can I view? ? No name, nothing. Delete. Why on earth would I call you back with something like that? I mean, I'm getting inundated here with people that are basically sending me resumes for this. So just to let you guys know, this is probably the highest. I've always had high caliber tenants in all my units, downtown, especially downtown, Mount Pleasant, Crosstown. Even in Richmond, my Richmond units are not at the same price point as they are downtown, but they went from kind of blue-collar construction guys to now middle management people making, $60,000, $70,000 a year. It used to be blue-collar guys 7 or 8 years ago, barely scraping $40K. But it is competitive out there, and I feel sorry. I really felt bad for the other 4, which were incredibly high quality tenants. I would have loved to have had all 5 of the people that I was able to get the first showings in on. So it is tough out there, but for the life of me, I mean, gee, if you're sending text messages saying, "When can I show it?" ? You guys must have a hard time renting anything. And if you are, I can't imagine what you're renting. So, this is what it's like now. You've got to have everything going for you now as a tenant in this city. If you want to rent a high quality unit, if you want to rent something not so high quality or working through a management company, you might have a better chance at it. But, and just offhand here, I'll tell you guys, it's a $600 monthly increase to the rent, which is great. My tenant was there 3 years and was paying way below market rent. I actually probably could have gotten a little bit more for this unit, but because I didn't get my ad out until the 12th of the month, I was a little concerned because, the real action comes in the first couple of days of every month. Because as you guys know, the tenants give their notice the month prior and then it's a leap of faith and then dive into the market on the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. That's when all the listings come out. Oftentimes I found, by the 10th, 15th of the month, if you haven't rented it, you're kind of getting a lot of people that have been turned down by other landlords that are still out there. But I also had, one of the guys that I had to say, "I'm sorry," also offered to pay me more than what I was asking for it. So it is tough out there. And listen, if you're a tenant here, it's nothing wrong with renting short term. This young doctor, she's just relocating here. She's probably going to stay a year or 2, and then I'll end up selling her a condo. We've already discussed it a little bit about the Vancouver market, and she's going to get her feet wet here. I'll end up selling her a condo and then putting a new tenant in there. But nothing wrong with renting for a few years, getting acclimated to a city, but it's got to be your number 1 priority, folks. Renting is going to kill you financially here in Vancouver. It'll kill you in any city now. The old days of renting and saving the difference, it's just not there. You know, a typical one-bedroom downtown now with parking, you're over $3,000 a month now. That's $36,000, $40,000 a year, every year that you're not getting anything back for. You've got to get into home ownership. You've got to make some sacrifices, maybe move and get into the market, maybe in a place that isn't, it's not going to be a Four Seasons, maybe a little smaller than what you need, but at least you're in the market now and riding it up as it goes. You're also taking advantage of that principal residence exemption. So I think those are the last few things I wanted to talk about: getting a tenant, negotiating and then the final thing too, when I was on Craigslist, boy, there's a lot of landlords that are leaving a lot of money on the table. Some of the ads that I saw on Craigslist they're comical, how they're placing their ads. Now, some of them are crappy stratas. They're garbage. I know the stratas and junk. They're on a bridge and all that other stuff. Those are always the ones that are still languishing around the middle of the month, hugging up on a bridge, bad strata, noisy locations, all that other good stuff. But they're not doing themselves any justice with their ads. Their photos are terrible. They're obviously the photos that they've taken when it's been tenanted. So there's boxes piled up, dishes in the sink, all that stuff. As my investor clients know, when you work with me buying an investment unit, we're going to do everything right. We're going to buy that unit. And then before you place a tenant in there, we're going to get some really high quality photos done. And then I'm going to virtually stage those photos for you. I'm going to put together a rental package for you guys. And I'm also going to show you how to run your ads on Craigslist. There's a technique to this. You want a full description of the building, the location, the walk score. You want bullet points on this stuff. But then the photos have to be perfect, well lit, virtually staged, some empty, some staged. That's what's going to draw in your high quality grade A tenants like I have here. I didn't run this ad with photos from my current tenant. It's pretty cluttered. I run my professional photos with it virtually staged, and that's why I get 20 calls on this thing in the first couple of hours. But some of the ads on Craigslist, my God, some of them are being run by property managers. I'm just close it out here. I'm going on a bit long here. The vast majority of my local clients here manage their own rental properties, which I always encourage them to do. Manage your own properties. It's not that tough. I have a package. If it's your first investment property, I will teach you. I will spend an hour or two. I will give you all the forms you need. I'll set you up on how to run credit checks. We'll get professional photos taken. We'll get the photos virtually staged, so you'll have a package all ready to go every time you need a new tenant. But some of the property management companies, I've talked about this, they're not going to do as good of a job as you are. I have several property managers I will refer you to because I do have clients that live in Alberta, Ontario, in the States, out of province, in the interior, on the island, that they have to hire a property manager because they're not local. I have several that I refer to you, the best, but they're going to charge you 8 to 10% every month, half of the first month's rent to get a new tenant. And I'll be 100% honest with you, they are not going to do as good of a job as you can. They're the couple of the guys that I use, they're good, but they've got big portfolios. They're managing 60, 70, 80 units. Now, the turnover isn't all that much anymore, but they're busy. But you want to run these yourself with all possible. As long as you live in the Lower Mainland, that's what I would suggest you do. That will always get you the best rental rates. You'll be able to screen your tenants properly. You won't have issues. Most of the people that call me to sell a tenanted property, a lot of times they've had issues with the tenants. Sometimes they've done it themselves and they haven't done it right. They haven't screened the tenant properly. They didn't run a credit check. They didn't call for their previous landlord. They didn't verify their employer. It doesn't take that long. Or in some cases, they've had a property manager. And that property manager, I don't think, did a whole lot of work. Basically, the first guy that showed up wanted the condo, write me a check, and it's yours. So you have to be really careful. Self-managing your properties is the way to go. It's not that difficult. And I always tell people, once you've done the first one, the next ones are a breeze. This total process for this one I just rented in Mount Pleasant, I would say the entire process was 3 hours work. An hour or so on the phone going back and forth. another hour showing it to the 5 prospects, and then about another hour running the credit check, talking with the tenant, getting the tenancy agreement signed. So it's a real gravy train these days. It's not a lot of work, not in this current vacancy rate. I'm Owen Bigland. As always, thanks for watching. I'll see you next week.